Have you ever really stopped to think about what it means to, well, know something? Not just, knowing a fact like the capital of France, but understanding what knowing itself actually is.
That's a deep question.
It is. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're taking a deep dive into epistemology. It's the branch of philosophy that really gets into those fundamental questions about knowledge.
Right. And our mission here really is to give you the essentials. We want to explore the nature of knowledge, maybe its limits too.
Okay.
We've looked at quite a bit of material, some really foundational philosophical texts. And the plan is to, break down these sometimes complex ideas.
Make them accessible.
Exactly. Give you a shortcut maybe to being pretty well informed about this whole fascinating field.
Yeah.
Because it touches everything, really.
It absolutely does. We'll look at what knowledge even is, how we think we get it, and there's tricky times when maybe we're just plain wrong. Because figuring out knowledge itself isn't just for academics, right? It's a vital skill for navigating the world, especially today with so much information flying around.
Couldn't agree more.
So let's start right at the beginning then. Epistemology. What are we actually talking about? The word itself is a bit of a clue, isn't it?
It is. It comes from Greek. You've got episteme,
which means
knowledge, and logos.
Study or explanation, something like that.
Exactly. So put them together and it's, the study of knowledge.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward, actually.
Okay. So it asks the big questions like, what is knowledge anyway? Is it different from just believing something?
Right. Or just having an opinion.
Yeah.
And how do we get it? Can we know everything? Or are there limits? Those are the core questions.
And how do philosophers actually do epistemology? It's not like running experiments in a lab, usually.
No, not typically. It often starts with a kind of radical doubt, asking challenging questions.
Like what?
Like, what if everything I think I know is actually false? Or maybe, can I genuinely be certain about anything at all?
Wow, okay. Heavy stuff.
It can be. But then they use tools. Logical arguments, very careful analysis, and thinking up counterexamples. It's almost like being a detective, trying to pin down the essential features of a concept like knowledge.
That counterexample method sounds interesting. Can you unpack that a bit? And the conceptual analysis part?
Sure. Conceptual analysis is about identifying, the necessary ingredients, what has to be there for something to count as knowledge.
Okay, the my tabs.
Exactly. And then, what's the complete recipe? The set of ingredients that, when you have them all, guarantees you have knowledge. Those are the sufficient conditions.
Got it. Necessary and sufficient.
Right. And the counterexample method is how you test a proposed definition. You create a hypothetical situation, a story almost, where the definition seems to fit, but intuitively you'd say knowledge isn't actually present. It's designed to break the definition.
Okay, give me an example. Let's make it concrete.
All right. Imagine someone says, to know something, you must be absolutely certain, 100% certain, no doubt allowed.
Seems plausible, maybe.
Okay, but consider this. Right now, I believe there's, let's say, a robin on the branch just outside my window. I see it clearly. My eyesight's decent. I have, good reason to believe it.
Okay, seems reasonable.
But could I be hallucinating? Maybe it's a super realistic decoy someone put there. There's a tiny, tiny theoretical possibility of error, right?
I suppose, yeah, a sliver of doubt.
A sliver. But if there is a real robin there, and I'm seeing it, do I know it's a robin, even with that tiny theoretical doubt?
I'd probably say yes. I still know it's a robin.
Most people would. So if that intuition is right, then absolute certainty isn't necessary for knowledge in every single case. And that initial definition knowledge requires certainty. Well, it fails. The counterexample broke it.
Ah, I see. That's clever. So you use these little stories to test the rules.
Precisely. And this whole process points to something really important about epistemology. It's not just describing things. It's normative.
Normative. What does that mean in this context?
It means it deals with norms or standards or values. Knowledge isn't just a state we happen to be in. It's generally seen as a good state, something desirable. We want to have true beliefs rather than false ones.
Right. We prefer being right.
We do. And having good reasons justification makes our beliefs more likely to be true. So epistemology doesn't just describe what knowledge is, it also implicitly tells us about better and worse ways to form beliefs. We value justified belief. Think about how we evaluate claims from, say, politicians or news sources. We expect them to have good reasons.
That makes sense. We judge people based on whether their beliefs seem justified. Okay, so if knowledge is this valuable thing we strive for, how do we actually get it? What are the different pathways?
Good question. Philosophers often distinguish between different ways of knowing. A key distinction is between a priori and a posteriori knowledge.
A priori. That sounds like before.
Sort of. It's knowledge gained through reason alone, before or independent of specific sensory experience. Think about math. 2 + 2 = 4. Or definitions. All bachelors are unmarried. You don't need to go out and observe bachelors to know that. It's true by definition, by reason.
Okay, I get that. So a posteriori is the opposite.
Exactly. It's knowledge gained after or through experience. Empirical knowledge, knowing the sky is blue or that this chair is hard or that Paris is in France. You need your senses, your experience of the world for that.
But wait, couldn't I learn that 2 + 2 = 4 through experience? Like my teacher told me, or I counted blocks.
Good point. You can certainly learn a priori truths through experience initially. You might memorize your times tables. But the justification, the ultimate reason why it's true, rests on logical or conceptual grounds, not on the observation itself. Your understanding of why 2 + 2 must equal 4 is a priori.
Okay, that clarifies it. So ways of knowing. What about different types of knowledge? Are there categories?
Yes, definitely. The main focus in traditional epistemology has been on propositional knowledge. This is knowledge of facts, statements, propositions that can be true or false.
Like, I know that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius.
Precisely. Or, I know that my keys are on the table. It's declarative knowledge.
Got it. What else?
Then there's procedural knowledge, which is know-how. It's having a skill and ability.
Like knowing how to ride a bike.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
You could have a physicist who knows all the physics of balance and motion involved in cycling. That's propositional knowledge. But if they've never ridden, they lack the procedural knowledge, the actual know-how.
Yeah.
They'll likely fall off.
Okay, I can picture that. Propositional, procedural,
Yeah.
anything else?
One more key type. Knowledge by acquaintance. This is knowledge you get from direct awareness, from immediate experience, without needing to infer it.
Knowing pain when you feel it.
Exactly. Or knowing a person because you've met them directly. The philosopher Bertrand Russell talked a lot about this. He suggested that what we're really directly acquainted with are our own sensory experiences, what he called sense data.
Sense data.
Yeah. So when you see that robin outside, Russell might say you're not directly aware of the robin itself, but of your visual experience of the robin, the colors, the shape in your visual field. That's the sense data. You then infer that there's an external object, the robin, causing that experience.
So we're only directly touching our own experiences and inferring the outside world.
That's the idea. And, it immediately suggests a potential gap, doesn't it, between our subjective experience and the objective world out there.
Yeah, it opens up the possibility of being wrong, which makes the idea of truth super important, I guess.
Absolutely crucial. And for our discussion, we'll generally assume truth isn't just relative. A statement is either true or false, period, regardless of what anyone believes. The standard view here is often the correspondence theory of truth. Basically, a statement is true if it corresponds to the facts, if it matches reality. The cat is on the mat is true if, and only if, there's actually a cat on the actual mat.
Simple enough, but yeah, foundational. Okay, so with those pieces, different ways and types of knowing, the importance of truth, let's get to the classic definition, the one that stood for ages.
Right. That's Plato's traditional account. Knowledge is justified true belief, or JTB for short.
Justified true belief. Okay, walk me through the conditions.
3 conditions. First, the proposition, let's call it P, must actually be true. You can't know something false.
Makes sense.
Second, you, the subject S, must believe that P is true. If you don't believe it, you can't really claim to know it.
Right, you can't know something you don't even think is true.
And third, your belief in P must be justified. You need to have good reasons or evidence for believing it. It can't just be a lucky guess that happens to be true.
That feels pretty solid. It seems really intuitive. Covers all the bases, doesn't it? True, you believe it, and you have good reason.
It felt solid for about 2,000 years. It has huge intuitive appeal. But then in 1963, a philosopher named Edmund Gettier published this tiny 3-page paper.
Just 3 pages.
Yep. Titled, Is Justified True Belief Knowledge? And it completely shook things up. He presented these incredibly simple counterexamples, now called Gettier cases.
The counterexamples again.
Exactly. These cases describe situations where someone clearly has a justified true belief, but our intuition screams that they don't actually know. They show that JTB, while maybe necessary, isn't sufficient for knowledge. Something else is missing.
Okay, I need to share these. Give me a Gettier case.
All right. Let's take one derived from the Indian philosopher Dharmakirti. Imagine a traveler, exhausted, crossing a desert. He sees what looks exactly like an oasis with water ahead, a mirage. So he forms a justified belief there is water over there.
Okay, justified by the visual appearance.
Right. Now, suppose, purely by coincidence, there is actually water right at that spot, but it's hidden just beneath the sand, completely invisible. The mirage has nothing to do with the real water.
Whoa. Okay.
So his belief there is water over there is true, and it's justified by the mirage, but does he know there's water there?
No, it feels like he just got incredibly lucky. His reason for believing it, the mirage, wasn't connected to why it was actually true, the hidden water.
Precisely. That disconnect is key. Or take Russell's stopped clock case. A man looks at a clock on the wall that he knows is usually reliable. It reads 4.3. And let's say it is exactly 4.3.
Okay. True belief seems justified.
But unbeknownst to him, the clock actually stopped working precisely 12 hours ago.
So he's only right by sheer chance because he looked at that exact moment.
Exactly. He has a justified true belief, but we wouldn't say he knows the time from looking at that stopped clock. It's luck again.
Okay, these are great. What about fake barn country? You mentioned that one.
Right. Fake barn country. This one's from Carl Jeanette. Imagine Henry is driving through the countryside. Unbeknownst to him, the locals, for some quirky reason, have erected dozens of incredibly realistic fake barn facades all along the road.
Weird, but okay.
Henry happens to glance out the window and sees what looks like a barn. And by sheer luck, he happens to be looking at the one and only real barn in the entire district. He forms the belief, that's a barn.
It's true and justified by his visual perception, which is usually reliable.
Correct. True belief. Justified. But does Henry know it's a barn? If he had looked just a few seconds earlier or later, he'd have been looking at a fake and formed a false belief.
Yeah, that feels way too accidental. It's like his justification is undermined by the context he's unaware of.
Exactly. So Gettier cases blew the JTB definition out of the water. They show that your justification needs to be connected to the truth in the right way, not just accidentally aligned with it.
So what did philosophers do? Just give up? Not likely. They immediately started trying to patch the JTB account. If JTB isn't sufficient, what extra condition do we need?
Okay, like what?
Well, some suggested adding a no false premises or no false lemmas condition. The idea is your justification can't rely on any false intermediate beliefs.
How would that help?
It solves the stopped clock case, arguably. The man implicitly believes this clock is working correctly, which is false. It might solve the mirage case, too, if you see the mirage itself as a false premise.
But fake barn country. Henry doesn't seem to rely on a false belief. He just sees the barn.
Good point. That's a problem for that fix. Another approach was the no defeaters condition. This says there shouldn't be any other truths out there which, if the person knew them, would defeat their justification.
So for Henry, the truth, most things that look like barns around here are fake, would defeat his justification if he knew it.
That seems to handle the fake barn case and the others too. But then defining precisely what counts as a defeater gets complicated. The debate continues, honestly. It really does seem to circle back to justification, doesn't it? What it means to be justified.
It's absolutely central. And remember, justification makes a belief more likely to be true, but it doesn't guarantee truth. You can have solid reasons and still, unfortunately, be wrong.
Which leads to another big debate you mentioned earlier, internalism versus externalism, about where justification comes from.
Right. Is justification entirely determined by factors internal to your mind? Things you can access through reflection, like your reasons, your evidence, your memories? That's internalism.
So if I believe something but can't remember why, an internalist might say I'm not justified right now.
Potentially, yes. You need access to the justifying reasons. Externalism, on the other hand, says justification can depend on factors outside your direct mental access.
Like what?
Like the actual reliability of the process that produced the belief. Alvin Goldman's reliabilism is a key externalist view. If your belief was formed by a generally reliable process like normal vision, good memory, logical reasoning, then it's justified, even if you can't explain how that process works internally.
The calculator example you gave earlier.
Exactly. You trust the calculator because it's reliable, even if you don't know its algorithms. Your justification is external, based on the calculator's reliability. But again, fake barn country is tricky even for reliabilism because Henry's vision is a reliable process, yet he still seems to lack knowledge.
It's a real puzzle. Okay, so justification can be internal or external. What about its structure? You mentioned a building versus a web.
Yes. Theories about the structure of justification. Foundationalism is the building analogy. It holds that our knowledge structure rests on a foundation of basic beliefs.
Basic belief.
Beliefs that are justified in themselves, not by inference from other beliefs. They don't need further support. They just are justified perhaps through direct experience, like knowledge by acquaintance of sense data, or because they're self-evident, like Descartes' I think, therefore I am.
And all our other beliefs are built on top of this foundation.
That's the idea. They form the superstructure, justified by their connection back down to those basic foundational beliefs.
Okay, makes sense. What's the alternative? The web.
That's coherentism. It argues that justification isn't linear like a building, but holistic like a web. A belief is justified if it fits coherently within a larger network of beliefs that mutually support each other.
So it's about how well a belief fits with everything else I believe.
Exactly. Think of a spider web. Individual strands might be weak, but the whole interconnected structure is strong. If a new potential belief clashes badly with the rest of your well-established beliefs, the coherentist says you're likely not justified in accepting it.
Like if someone tells me the sky is green, that clashes with my strong belief network based on experience.
Perfect example. Your belief the sky is blue is strengthened because it coheres with your memories, testimony from others, scientific explanations, etc.
Coherentism sounds plausible too. Are there problems with it?
There are critiques, yes. One is the potential for circularity beliefs might just end up justifying each other in a loop without any anchor in reality.
A self-contained bubble of belief.
Right. Which leads to the isolation objection. Couldn't you have a perfectly coherent set of beliefs that is nonetheless completely detached from the real world? Think of someone in a highly sophisticated virtual reality simulation, like Dinah in that thought experiment. Everything inside the simulation makes sense, it's perfectly coherent, but it doesn't correspond to external reality at all.
Yikes. Okay, so whether it's a building or a web, justification seems fragile.
Well, maybe not fragile, but certainly fallible. That's a key takeaway. All our primary sources of justification, perception, memory, inference, testimony from others, they can all lead us astray sometimes.
Examples?
Sure. Memory is notoriously reconstructive. We misremember things. Inference, especially inductive reasoning, generalizing from examples, only gives probability, not certainty. Testimony depends on the reliability and honesty of others who can be mistaken or biased. And perception, well, optical illusions like the Miller-Lyer illusion show our senses can be tricked.
So none of our ways of justifying beliefs are foolproof.
Not absolutely foolproof, no. And this inherent fallibility is precisely what opens the door to philosophical skepticism.
The really deep doubt we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Skepticism in philosophy is the view that achieving some, or maybe even all, knowledge is actually impossible.
All knowledge. That seems extreme.
That's global skepticism. It questions whether we can know anything for sure, particularly about the external world. Then there's local skepticism, which is more targeted, questioning our ability to gain knowledge in specific areas, like morality or religion.
Let's stick with global skepticism for a moment. How do they argue for such a radical view?
They often rely on those skeptical hypotheses we touched on. These are scenarios designed to show that our current experiences could be completely deceptive, and we have no definitive way to prove they aren't.
The dream argument, the evil demon.
Right. Zhuangzi's dream argument from ancient China. How can you be certain you aren't dreaming right now? Dreams often feel perfectly real while you're in them. Then Descartes' evil demon. Imagine a powerful, malicious being is constantly feeding you false sensations, creating this entire world in your mind. How could you tell?
You couldn't if the demon was powerful enough.
And the modern version. Hillary Putnam's brain in a vat, BIV. Maybe you're nothing but a brain floating in a nutrient solution, hooked up to a supercomputer, simulating everything you experience. Your experience would be identical whether you're a BIV or living in the real world.
That's deeply unsettling.
It is. And the structure of the skeptical argument is quite powerful. It usually goes something like this. Premise 1. If I don't know that I'm not in a skeptical scenario, like being a BIV, then I don't know seemingly obvious things, like I have hands. Premise 2. I don't know that I'm not in a skeptical scenario. Conclusion. Therefore, I don't know that I have hands.
And since I have hands, this seems like a basic thing we know. If we don't know that, we likely don't know much else about the external world either.
That's the implication. The skeptic sets the bar for knowledge incredibly high, demanding we rule out these radical possibilities.
So how do philosophers respond? Do they just accept we know nothing?
Oh, no. There are many responses. A lot of them challenge that incredibly high bar set by the skeptic. One famous response comes from G.E. Moore with his common sense argument.
What did Moore say?
It's almost startlingly direct. Moore would essentially hold up his hands and say, here is one hand, gesture to the other, and here is another. Therefore, I know external objects exist and skepticism is false.
That's it. Just asserting it.
It's a bit more subtle. He's basically flipping the skeptic's argument. He accepts the skeptic's first premise. If I don't know I'm not a BIV, I don't know I have hands. But he denies the second premise. He claims, I do know I have hands, and therefore concludes, I must know I'm not a BIV. He argues his common sense certainty about having hands is stronger than the philosophical certainty demanded by the abstract skeptical hypothesis.
So trusting direct experience over philosophical puzzles.
In a way, yes. Another influential response is contextualism.
Contextualism. How does that work?
It argues that the meaning of the word know, specifically, the standards for justification required to truthfully say someone knows something, changes depending on the context of the conversation.
So knowing means different things at different times.
Kind of. The standards shift. In everyday life, talking about whether you know where your keys are, the standards are relatively low. You don't need to rule out being a brain in a vat to say, I know my keys are on the table. But if the stakes are incredibly high, say, in a courtroom deciding someone's fate, or a surgeon confirming a diagnosis, the context demands much higher standards of justification. We implicitly raise the bar. The skeptic, according to contextualists, artificially imposes the highest possible standards onto everyday situations where they aren't usually relevant.
That makes a lot of practical sense. Okay, so that's tackling global skepticism. What about local skepticism, doubting knowledge in specific areas?
Right, like moral knowledge. As we mentioned, moral claims are often seen as normative, not descriptive. Someone stole the money. David Hume's point about the is-ought gap is relevant here. It seems you can't logically derive a statement about what ought to be purely from statements about what is. This makes proving objective moral truths quite challenging for skeptics.
And religion.
Similar issues often arise with religious belief, particularly concerning rational proof for God's existence. Skeptics point to the lack of universally compelling empirical evidence. While believers might rely on faith, Scripture, which is a form of testimony or personal experience, the skeptic focused on rational justification finds these insufficient. Some theologians, like Pascal, even argued that faith might be necessary precisely because rational proof is impossible or inappropriate for the divine.
Okay. So we've journeyed from defining knowledge through justification to these deep skeptical challenges. But philosophy isn't just abstract puzzles, right? Does epistemology connect to the real world?
Absolutely. That's where applied epistemology comes in. It uses the concepts and tools we've been discussing to analyze practical issues, often involving social dimensions of knowledge.
Like how groups know things.
Exactly. A major area is social epistemology. It moves beyond the individual knower to look at how knowledge is pursued, shared, and evaluated within communities and social structures. How do we learn from others? That involves testimony.
Getting information from people, books, the news.
Right. And that immediately forces us to think about how we assess the trustworthiness of sources. Are they competent, honest, biased? What's their track record? Social epistemology studies this reliance on others.
What else does it look at?
Things like peer disagreement. If someone who seems just as smart and informed as you disagrees with your conclusion, having looked at the same evidence, what should you do? Should you reduce your confidence? How much?
That's a tough one we face all the time online.
Indeed. It also looks at group justification. Can a group, like a scientific panel or a court, be said to believe something and be justified in doing so? How does group belief relate to the beliefs of the individuals in the group?
This sounds incredibly relevant, and I think you mentioned something called standpoint epistemology.
Yes, and this is really fascinating and important. Standpoint epistemology argues that a person's social position, their identity markers like race, gender, class, experiences of oppression or privilege, can significantly shape their epistemic position, what they are likely to know, and how their claims to knowledge are treated by others.
How so?
It suggests that those in marginalized or less powerful positions often have access to insights and understandings that are less available to those in dominant positions, especially regarding how power dynamics and social structures actually operate.
Can you give an example?
Think about the factory floor example again. The workers performing the task daily often have a much clearer, more nuanced understanding of inefficiencies or safety risks than a manager who only observes occasionally from a distance. Their standpoint gives them access to specific knowledge. Or the example from the 1950s South, Black citizens living under Jim Crow often had a much more accurate and profound understanding of the realities of systemic racism and its daily impact than white citizens who benefited from or were insulated from that system. Their lived experience provided a distinct epistemic standpoint. Similarly, women are often better positioned to recognize and articulate subtle forms of sexism in professional environments.
So it's not just about individual bias, but how social structures influence whose knowledge gets valued.
It even critiques fields we often think of as purely objective, like science. Early heart disease research, for instance, overwhelmingly focused on male subjects. This led to a model of heart attack symptoms based on men's experiences, causing women's often different symptoms to be missed or misdiagnosed for years. The standpoint of the researchers, predominantly male, created an epistemic blind spot.
That's powerful. It shows how who gets to define knowledge matters.
It does. And when certain standpoints are systematically ignored or distrusted, it leads to what philosopher Miranda Fricker calls epistemic injustice.
Injustice related to knowledge.
Yes. She identifies two main kinds. First, testimonial injustice. This happens when prejudice causes a listener to give less credibility to a speaker's word than it deserves.
Like not believing someone just because of who they are?
Precisely. Think about studies showing that pain reported by Black patients is sometimes taken less seriously or treated less aggressively than the same pain reported by white patients. That's a potential testimonial injustice rooted in racial bias. Or consider how the message of a movement like Black Lives Matter might be unfairly dismissed by distorting its meaning based on prejudice against the speakers.
I see. What's the second kind?
Hermeneutical injustice. This is more structural. It occurs when a society's shared conceptual resources, the language, the concepts we use to understand the world, are insufficient or biased, making it difficult for someone to even articulate or understand their own experiences.
Can you give an example of that?
The classic example is sexual harassment before that term gained widespread currency.
Yeah.
Women experienced patterns of behavior that made them uncomfortable or threatened, but without a shared name and concept for it, it was hard to make sense of it, explain it to others, or recognize it as a systemic issue. Their experience was real, but the collective hermeneutical resources were lacking, which itself was a form of injustice, hindering understanding and resistance.
Wow, so lacking the right words can be an injustice itself.
It can prevent understanding and solidarity, absolutely.
This has been quite a journey. We started just trying to define knowledge, that JTB thing.
Justified true belief.
Right. And then the Gettier cases blew that up. We dug into justification, internal, external, foundationalism, coherentism, realizing it's fallible.
Which led us straight into skepticism, the BIVs, and evil demons.
Yeah, unsettling stuff. But then we saw responses like common sense and contextualism. And finally, how all this connects to our social world through testimony, disagreement, standpoint theory, and these really important ideas about epistemic injustice.
It really shows how epistemology isn't just an abstract game. It underpins how we think, learn, and interact.
It absolutely does. And hopefully understanding these concepts helps you, our listener, to think a bit more critically about the information you encounter every day, about your own beliefs and where they come from.
And maybe leaves you with a final thought to chew on. Given everything we've discussed, the fallibility of our reasoning, the potential for societal biases to distort understanding, the challenges of justification, what does it really mean to be well-informed in our complex, interconnected world today? And perhaps, what responsibility do you have as an individual knower navigating this world in contributing to collective understanding carefully and fairly?
That's a deep question to end on, a really powerful thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of epistemology. Keep questioning, keep exploring.